On this week's episode of The Wealth Cafe, I want to dive into a topic that might be a little controversial, and it is going to be the worst asset you can inherit or leave behind to your loved ones. Now, I know your first thought is going to be, how is it possible to have a bad asset to inherit? Money's good, right? Who cares what form it comes in? However, I want to take some time because this can save you, your loved ones, and anyone you're leaving money behind to a good chunk of change when it comes to taxes and can be super beneficial. Now, this episode is going to be specifically for if you plan to leave money behind to a non-spouse, or if you think you will be inheriting money from a parent, an aunt, or uncle, anybody if you plan to inherit money also from a non-spousal perspective. When we bring in the spousal aspect of things, you can pass an unlimited amount of money from you to a U.S. citizen that is a spouse. So the rules are a little bit different. So this is going to be our focus today, is that non-spousal inheritance. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it or waste time trying to make you guess what that asset might be. It's an inherited IRA, a traditional IRA, those pre-tax dollars. Think right now, if you are working for your employer and you are putting money away into a 401k, not a Roth, and you are getting pre-tax dollars put into that account and you are receiving the deduction. Now, this is a hard asset to leave behind to a loved one or to inherit from your parents. I'm just going to go with that example for this episode because of the changes we saw through the Secure Act. Now, it used to be that you could have more time in order to take the withdrawals from this account. However, one of the changes we saw through the Secure Act is you now have this thing called the 10-year rule. Now, in this 10 years, you are required to take out all of the money in this account. Why does that matter, right? Things are happening in 10 years. That should be plenty of time for you to take out and drain any IRA that you inherit. Here's the issue. It typically happens in our highest earning years. So a lot of you listening are probably in what's called the sandwich generation. You have aging parents. You have young children at home, whether they are fur babies or they are human children. And so you have a lot going on. You're probably at the height of your career. So to add income by having to pull out an inherited IRA, that's only increasing the tax bracket you are falling into. And I'm going to give you an example of the math behind this in a moment to make sure it's clear. But this can also impact things like your equity compensation, the way it's taxed. It can impact your income, your salaries, your bonuses. Maybe you also expected your children to get some type of financial aid if they are in college, or any type of financial needs-based they are receiving currently for school. This would impact things if you all of a sudden inherit a lump sum of money that you are then withdrawing from every single year. Now, let's break this down in an example. We have a married couple, Cynthia and Robert. They have 2 kids that are in high school and are getting ready to get out of the house and prepare for those college years. Unfortunately, Cynthia's mom just passed away and her dad passed away long before that. We know at this point that women tend to outlive men. And so now that both of her parents passed away, Cynthia is an only child and she just inherited a $2 million IRA from her parents that was remaining. Sounds like an amazing problem to have, right? Who doesn't want to inherit a $2 million IRA? Now, just to give you a little more context, Cynthia and her husband are 2 incredible earners. They have great jobs and are earning $350,000 a year before any deductions, because I want to keep this as a simple example. Because of the 10-year rule, Cynthia and her husband are going to have to take out this money over a 10-year period. Now, the rule does allow you to have some flexibility in how much money that you are taking out each year. But I want to, for this example, show what it looks like if they take out the same amount of money every single year. Now, as we are looking at it at $350,000, married filing joint in the year 2026, keep in mind it can change every year, Cynthia and her husband are in a marginal tax bracket of 24%. However, if you take $2 million, divide it by 10, they now have another $200,000 in ordinary income that is being added to their 2026 income. Now, it's amazing. Cynthia and her husband have just raised their income to $550,000 a year. But this also means that married filing joint, it has moved them marginally, that is, into a 32% tax bracket. Now, Cynthia and her husband could wait until later on if they want to take out larger lump sums later in life, later in that 10-year period, but they have big expenses coming up like college tuitions. They are going to be traveling a lot to take the kids on college tours. And so they would like to pull out and have access to those funds. They're working with their financial advisor and their accountant to figure out how much to take out each year. However, they are going to see a significant jump in their marginal income and tax bracket every single year. Now, what could Cynthia or her parents have done in order to help plan for this better? Number one, it's having the conversation, understanding what is it you're going to inherit and what is it you're potentially going to leave behind. Now, one of the conversations that Cynthia can have with her parents is the potential for her parents to have done Roth conversions during their lifetime. And as Cynthia is now sitting with this tax burden, she's also sitting in the back of her mind thinking, okay, how do I make sure I don't do the same thing to my kids and leave them with a huge tax burden? It's always about planning for that lowest tax you are going to pay throughout your lifetime, never just in one year. Now, Cynthia's parents did an amazing thing by leaving behind this incredible inheritance. We are not going to fight that for a moment. But by taking time to have done strategic tax planning during their life, they could have saved Cynthia and her husband a lot of tax planning and a huge tax burden if they had sat down and done things like Roth conversions, planned different strategies with their financial team so they weren't passing on this inherited IRA, this pre-tax burden that is now going to go to Cynthia and her husband. There are specific years that it makes more sense for people to do these Roth conversions, and you need to work with your financial advisor and tax accountant to figure out when you should be doing them. It's so easy for many of us to sit here and say, I want to pay the lowest tax bill this year. I want to make sure that I'm always reducing my taxes. But it is essential for you to look and sit here and say, how am I reducing how much I am paying in taxes, both during my lifetime and also for what I want to leave behind. This is also when it's a really great time to work with an estate attorney and say, hey, what strategically can we do to plan with my financial advisor to say, should I be passing along different assets? Something Cynthia's parents could have done as well is say, hey, we're really philanthropic. We want to do things like gift appreciated assets or gift money out of their pre-tax IRA in order to reduce how much they were leaving behind in terms of this big tax bomb and tax shell to the next generation. There are so many different things that you can do based on your individual strategy, but the key thing is to make sure that you are planning early and having these conversations. And this goes for every generation. It is essential for Cynthia to make sure she is now planning for her next generation and learning from what she saw happen with her parents. If you anticipate receiving an inheritance from any of your loved ones, now is a great time to have the conversation and do planning in order to talk about things from an estate perspective, a tax perspective, and a financial planning perspective to make sure you are maximizing all of the hard-earned dollars that your family has worked for and keeping it in your family rather than just paying it out in taxes. Having so many of these simple conversations can help you so far into the future and the long run, rather than finding out when it's too late. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time on another episode of The Wealth Cafe.